Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. Today I am doing part 2 of my series, Classics That Don't Suck. If you are new to my channel, just so you know, I am a huge fan of gothic, horror, and thriller, so a lot of the classics I'm going to be more drawn to will be more in the gothic, spooky, dark, and depressing kind of vibe. So yeah, I've got 5 books for you guys to get through today, and let's start right in. Alright, so I think the easiest one to start with is probably one of the best known classics of all time, Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. So yes, the actual name of the book is Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, not Alice in Wonderland, by Lewis Carroll. This is one of the coolest, trippiest, most intricate and weird book I have ever read. If you've never, if you have lived under a rock and have somehow never heard of Alice in Wonderland, it is basically like a fever dream. It is the story of a girl who follows a white rabbit down a rabbit hole and finds herself in a completely different world where she can eat something or drink something and it changes her size. There is talking caterpillars, there are disappearing cats, there's a Jabberwocky, like there are so many just bizarre things. My favorite scene, which is I guess extremely predictable, is absolutely the tea party scene. I've loved seeing it in the book with the original illustrations. I've loved seeing it on film. I think Alice's Adventures in Wonderland is one of the greatest novels ever. This book also has Through the Looking Glass in it, which is the sequel to Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. I will be honest though, I very much don't remember Through the Looking Glass. I know I read it years and years ago, but I don't remember it anywhere near as much. It has beautiful original illustrations. If you're going to get a copy of this book, I do recommend getting one with the original illustrations. Most do. This is one of the more famous ones, When Alice Meets the Caterpillar. It might seem like a children's book, but it most definitely is not, especially because it's pretty much known that Lewis Carroll was just on a lot of drugs when he wrote this, so it's just weird and trippy. There's some amazing, amazing poetry in Alice's Adventures in Wonderland that I think are so cool. The lobster quadrille, I can't even say this word. The lobster quadrille is awesome. I mean, there's just so many amazing, famous moments and scenes, and it is just a beautiful book of poems and songs and insane storytelling, and you have no idea exactly what's happening, and I do highly recommend everybody check this book out at least once in their life, and then just go and watch all of the film adaptations because there's so many amazing, amazing, amazing ones. Why is a raven like a writing desk? Okay, so now that we have like the all-knowing classic out of the way, I want to talk about SlaughterhouseFive by Kurt Vonnegut. This is one of my all-time favorite books ever. I have a SlaughterhouseFive tattoo right here. I'm obsessed with this book. I love it. I think it's amazing. I'm going to read the back of it for you. So it says, SlaughterhouseFive, an American classic. It's one of the world's great anti-war books, centering on the infamous firebombing of Dresden. Billy Pilgrim's odyssey through time reflects the mythic journey of our own fractured lives as we search for meaning in what we fear most. So this is a postmodern story. This book I think is really difficult to talk about without going into what happens in it. I will say that Kurt Vonnegut's depiction of time and how time works in the universe, especially for Billy Pilgrim, is one of the coolest things I have ever read. I love the attitude that this book has, this whole concept of so it goes, and this kind of circular, infinite universe that Kurt Vonnegut creates through this novel, I think is both such a depressing and positive outlook on the world. Kurt Vonnegut actually fought in, I believe it's World War II, and so there a lot of Billy Pilgrim's life is heavily influenced by Kurt Vonnegut's own life, and I just find this to be one of the most intricate, insane, bizarre war stories ever. I just go into this pretty much blind, I would say, and just read it for what it is. This book is really difficult to talk about without giving things away. But there's no such thing as a linear timeline in SlaughterhouseFive, and I think that is such a brilliant way to write this book, and there's so many times where I feel like that wouldn't work, but in the way that this has been crafted by Kurt Vonnegut, it works so well and so beautifully. And this is a very depressing yet uplifting book at the same time. It's just a journey, and I've never read anything like it except for Vonnegut's other works. So it is definitely my favorite of all of his stuff, but it's so worth the read, and I highly, highly, highly recommend it. So third, I have, well, you can't see it because I have all these stickers from the Strand. I just never take them off, I don't know. This is The Monk by Matthew Lewis. This is one of the very first Gothic lit stories ever published. It was published, I think, it's this right here, in 1796. I will read the back of the book for you really quickly. So it says, "Prepare to be shocked. This novel, written in 1796, is a Gothic festival of sex, magic, and ghastly ghostly violence rarely seen in literature. The Monk is remarkably modern in style and tells a breathless tale of temptation, imprisonment, and betrayal. Matthew Lewis recounts the downfall of Ambrosio, the holier-than-thou monk seduced within the walls of a Madrid abbey until he heads for the utter corruption of the soul. Meanwhile, two sets of young lovers are thwarted, and the reader thrills to pursuits through the woods by bandits and is chilled by the specter of nuns imprisoned in vermin-ridden and skeleton-crowded vaults. Late 18th century audiences were polarized in opinion as to the novel's merits. Lord Byron and the Marquis de Sade were impressed by Lewis's daring, while Coleridge warned parents against the suitability of the monk for their sons or daughters, describing the novel as poison for youth. If you want a novel that still terrifies over 200 years after it was written, there is none finer than The Monk." I think it's interesting that Coleridge didn't like that. I feel like, I don't know, Coleridge is pretty depressing and kind of scandalous in his own right. But anyhow, so The Monk by Matthew Lewis. I picked this book up a couple of years ago because when I was in high school, I really wanted to take a class on Gothic Lit, and I wasn't able to take it. And this was the book that they highlighted, and I was like, I've heard of Dracula, I've heard of Frankenstein, I've never heard of this. So I finally found a copy one day in my bookstore, picked it up, read the whole thing in 2 days, and was like, holy shit, this book is so good. It is absurdist, it is weird, it is dark, it is filled with so much depravity. It is such a weird critique on religion and the holier than thou concept. And it feels so modern. I remember reading it and being like, this book could have been written today, and I would believe that some author up in Connecticut wrote this, you know? I really, really, really enjoy the book. I think Ambrosio is a really interesting character. And I really like watching his rise and fall. I think this is a great book. To do that, it is very, almost Shakespearean in a sense, like Othello or Macbeth or King Lear, those kind of characters, not the place, but those characters, where they do have this rise, this flaw that creates their downfall, and then everything unravels around them. This book definitely follows in that. It's an easy read. It's 300 pages. But I was blown away when I read this, and I didn't want to put it down. And it's weird, and it's wacky, and it's dark, and it's fun, and it is just the most unboring novel you could ever pick up from the 1700s. I think The Monk is absolutely amazing, and I don't think enough people talk about it. So if you've never read The Monk by Matthew Lewis, pick it up. You will not regret it. Continuing in the realm of Gothic fiction, I've definitely talked about this book on my channel before, but we have Always Lived in the Castle by Shirley Jackson. This is my favorite book by Shirley Jackson. I think Mary, Cat, and Constance are some of the most interesting characters I have ever read about in literature, and to this day I sit and I think about what they did and what they knew and how they did things, and I'm just like, wow. It's been years since I first read this book, and I'm still thinking about the motives that these characters had. I think this book is amazing. I'll read the cover flap for you. My name is Mary Catherine Blackwood. I am 18 years old, and I live with my sister Constance. I've often thought that with any luck at all, I could have been born a werewolf, because the two middle fingers on both my hands are the same length. But I have had to be content with what I had. I dislike washing myself, and dogs, and noise. I like my sister Constance, and Richard Plantagenet, and I can't say these words, and Amanita phyloides, the death cup mushroom. Everyone else in my family is dead. You will be wondering about that sugar bowl, I imagine. Is it still in use? You are wondering. Has it been cleaned? You may very well ask. Was it thoroughly washed? This book is incredible. This book is absolutely absolutely incredible. I'm fairly certain Lemony Snicket talks about sugar bowls so often because of We Have Always Lived in the Castle. I could also be 100% wrong on that, but whatever. This is an amazing, like, mystery tale. It has an insane twist ending. And it's about just very strange characters. Constance and Mary Cat are the two surviving members of a very, very rich family. They live alone up in their fabulous mansion with all of their money, but they've basically become recluses from the town, total shut-ins, and it's about them basically dealing with their lives. And I adore this book. It is scary, it is weird, it is disturbing, and it is just, it's also another book that feels very, very modern. Like, it's, I think, set in like the 50s, yet you could totally see this today, like somebody with like no internet and cut off from the outside world. You could totally see how these characters come about, and I love this book so, so much. I picked this up, like, I guess I can tell you exactly when I picked this up, on 10/10/2015. So 6 years ago and 5.5 years ago. And I was blown away by how much I loved this book. It is just so good and weird and interesting. And it's definitely the reason that I think Shirley Jackson is considered such a master of horror. And a master of like eeriness and suspense. This book is so atmospheric. If you want like a really good gothic mansion story, look no further than this. Like, just a beautiful sprawling estate. It is filled with so many interesting things, so many interesting characters who like walk its halls, and I absolutely adored this book. Can't recommend it enough. It is definitely a book that has stuck with me forever and ever, and I'm so pleased with it. If you are a Paul Tremblay fan, like Paul Tremblay's kind of your jam, he cites We Have Always Lived in the Castle a lot as one of his like biggest influences, and I highly recommend, if you're a Tremblay fan, to pick up We Have Always Lived in the Castle if you've never read it. Okay, and last but not least, I have this beautiful Easton Press edition of Crime and Punishment by Fyodor Dostoevsky that I just picked up. I love this book. It is so beautiful. It has like illustrations in it. It's got gold leafing. I'm just so happy that I got it. I mean, look at these illustrations. They're so nice. But Crime and Punishment is a book I read over the course of about a month or two, a couple years ago. I picked it up because I'd never really read Russian literature, and I had just gotten into Nabokov. I'd read Pale Fire, and I wanted to grab another like Russian writer. I guess Nabokov kind of wasn't like located in Russia anymore, but I did want to read Russian lit, and I couldn't look any further than Dostoevsky. I will pull up the Goodreads to tell you the summary of Crime and Punishment because it doesn't seem to be in my Easton Press copy. So the book description. Raskolnikov, a destitute and desperate former student, wanders through the slums of St. Petersburg and commits a random murder without remorse or regret. He imagines himself to be a great man, a Napoleon, acting for a higher purpose beyond conventional moral law. But as he embarks on a dangerous game of cat and mouse with a suspicious police investigator, Raskolnikov is pursued by the growing voice of his conscience and finds the noose of his own guilt tightening around his neck. Only Sonia, a downtrodden sex worker, can offer the chance of redemption. So Crime and Punishment, to me, has always kind of been like the Telltale Heart, if the Telltale Heart was like 600 pages long. It is a story about a senseless crime and living with your own personal guilt afterwards and almost being driven to like this like sense of madness. And it's a really cool snapshot, not only on like what living in Russia was like at that time, but also like how the psyche can be your own tormentor. And I've always thought it was so brilliantly done. The first couple pages kind of really almost feel like a movie. Everything happens really quickly. Like, you get to pretty much the climax of the story at the very beginning, which I always thought was really interesting, and then the rest of the story is like the consequences of this pivotal action. And it's a very strange setup for me, and there's a ton of characters, and you get all of this sprawling backstory afterwards, but everything is so central to the crime of the title. and then falling upon how the punishment of the crime is basically served out. Crime and Punishment, actually, every single book that I had today were books that I sought out on my own. I did not read these in school. I did not have these for a book club. These are just books that I read on my own because I had heard personally that they were amazing, amazing works of fiction, and they all are. I would say all of them do lead kind of on the thrilling, dark, macabre side of things. Perhaps Alice in Wonderland is the least in that area, but I think they all really balance out this kind of slow, droning, gothic thriller story with high-end classic literary writing. And I think they're all incredible works of fiction. I highly recommend all of them. And they're really fun. And I'd say apart from Crime and Punishment, they all feel like they could have been written today. Like, they're very modern. They feel very contemporary, even though they were written over the course of, like, I guess the last 200 years or so, if you throw them all in. But no, I can't praise these books enough. I really love and adore them, and I hope you guys check them out. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. If you have any classics that y'all would like to recommend to me to read or to include in the series, leave those in the comments down below. As always, I post every Monday and Thursday, and if you enjoy these videos, hit those likes and subscribe buttons. That helps me out a ton, and we'll catch you guys in the next one. Thank you so much. Mwah.